taking it back into the office and just kind of having a sit down and say, you know, what happened? What can you learn from it? What do you think you did wrong? What could you have done better? So it's really just kind of analyzing the entire situation, but more so allowing the SDR to kind of assess their own mistakes, if you will, and using that as a learning opportunity going forward.
Hey everybody, this is Morgan J. Ingram here, host of the SDR Chronicles, bringing you guys sales development leaders and practitioners and influencers to tell you how to do your sales development role right and how to do really well in sales to progress your career. Today, I have Neal. Super excited to have him on the show. Has a lot of valuable insight for you guys today. And the topic we're going into today is like how and why you need to keep emotions, out of your role to be successful at the end of the day. So without any further ado, I'm going to let Neal introduce himself, and we're going to get into the topic of the show today.
Thanks a lot, Morgan. Hi, everybody. This is Neal Gupta. Excited to be here. I'm with Masergy. I run our sales development program over here, and super excited to share some experiences and some stories on how to keep emotions in check. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Awesome. So, Neal, let's hop right into it. How do you keep your emotions in check? How is that possible? We're emotional beings.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of patience. It's a lot of silence. It's a lot of just understanding what the person is talking about, and it's not getting frustrated. You just have to let the emotions kind of, have a thick skin and kind of go from there.
Yeah, for sure. And so let's kind of talk about it. What do you see that reps get the most hanged up on? And how do they actually become so emotional that it actually takes them out of the role?
Yeah, so, I think what the reps do is that they go into the call, having a call plan session going on. They've got some expectations on what the person is going to say. All of a sudden, the person kind of throws an objection. A question that an SDR may have kind of results into, no, I'm not interested. And then they kind of get hung up on that, right? So it's kind of not being prepared for any potential objections. And then they start to kind of ramble. They start to kind of, go off on a tangent. Sometimes they even get kind of irritated as well. So I think not being prepared for the call will definitely kind of get the SDRs all riled up.
So you talked about getting riled up. Are people getting riled up? Like you said, is it because solely they're not prepared for the call? Or is it because maybe this is a new role for them? Or maybe this is a new company for them? Like, is there a deeper reason why people are getting emotionally frustrated?
Yeah, no, I think it's all of the above. I think, not preparing for the call is one big thing, but maybe not being too comfortable with the company and the value prop and understanding exactly how we help our clients. I think that can really kind of get them a tad bit more emotional and just kind of getting frustrated at the fact that they've got some expectations. And I think by having those expectations and the customer's not meeting those expectations, it kind of gets them a little bit frazzled, if you will. So I think that's kind of like the cause of it.
Yeah, and then I guess on a one-on-one basis, you're kind of diving into this. What are you telling a rep that maybe you told them once, hey, like your emotions are kind of getting the best of you, and they kind of heard you, but they really didn't at the end of the day, and they keep having like these situations where they get super flustered and they may be blurring out things that they should be blurring out. How are you handling that in your one-on-ones?
Yeah, so we do a lot of call coaching over here. We've got a lot of call recordings, and so we review those on a weekly basis. And so what we kind of pretty much do is we review the phone call, we listen to it, we kind of pause it at certain aspects of the conversation, depending on the tone of voice, depending on the emotions, depending on, how to react to these certain individuals. It's just more of just stay calm, be patient, don't get too overwhelmed. If you don't know the answer, just be honest. I think people get emotional when they try to know what they don't know. And that kind of, it turns the conversation around a little bit. So a lot of call coaching.
And how do you do your call coaching?
Yeah, so I've got call recordings. So we play the call recording. So we sit down together, we go over the intro, then we go kind of towards the meat of the conversation. We break it down by the questions that we're asking. We break it down by how to handle objections. And then we cover how to close the call. So we kind of do more of a segmentation for the entire call volume.
Do you break down every single call or only calls that like had a chance to actually convert?
No, we do every single call because I think there's a difference in how to conduct a conversation when you're talking to a gatekeeper versus maybe talking to someone who is a C-level executive versus maybe someone who's a manager. So we kind of do a lot of breakdowns of how to tackle each buyer persona. And so we're kind of reviewing every single call where the SDR is actually talking to a human being at the company.
Awesome. And that's good. And let's go back to the emotions, right? So when you're onboarding a new SDR, how are you making sure, or even getting in front of this emotional breakdowns that they can have across their role?
Yeah, so onboarding is very, very important for us. So what we do is we kind of just go over some of the highlights of, you're talking to people who are going to be smarter than you. So you got to have the patience. You got to know exactly what you're talking about. So we just break it down based off of knowledge of the product, the company, the industry. And I think by making the SDR feel comfortable with all the pieces of the puzzle, it then kind of calms them down. It calms them down a little bit. I've noticed that when you don't know something, that's when things kind of go haywire, if you will.
Yeah. I mean, you definitely don't want it to go haywire.
Yeah.
So in an instance, what has been the biggest, I guess, when someone starts new, right? What's been the biggest breakdown you've seen emotionally, and then why do you think there was a cause of that?
Yeah, I think the biggest breakdown emotionally is when they come in, they feel as though they can just conquer the world. It's going to be easy. It's just talking to people on the phone. It's not going to be that difficult, right? And so I think it's, again, breaking down those expectation barriers. And so when they come in, we go over the call recordings. We say, look, this is not too difficult as long as you can just do some research, figure out who you're talking to, and just understand that you don't want to be a robot on the phone. Just be a human being on the phone. If things don't go well, they don't go well, but just don't let that get you down in the weeds of the conversation. So kind of having more of a human connection versus being a robot on the phone, I think that really helps to calm the people down.
Yeah, for sure. And let's go into the different tactics that you have for people that are actually not as emotional on the team and they're actually able to move forward. Are you using those people for peer-to-peer mentoring so that other peers that are emotional can learn from them?
Yeah, absolutely. So I definitely have some of my top producing SDRs. They kind of take a team lead approach or a coaching and a mentoring approach. So they typically take aside the new SDR and kind of go over, how to conduct a conversation, what to say, what not to say, how to stay calm. So we definitely have a weekly check-in with an SDR who's definitely doing well, tagged with someone who's brand new.
And for that team lead, are you making sure that they're not, if someone is maybe emotionally up and down, but they're doing really well, does that affect the leadership of them being a team lead? And what are you telling someone who actually is a top performer and they're actually emotionally maybe unstable? Yeah,
so I mean, we really, really push just the overall concept of being consistent. Just kind of keep your emotions in check. There's going to be ups and downs in sales, in conversation. So on a daily basis, just kind of take a deep breath, maybe before you pick up the phone. Take a deep breath, maybe watch a funny video on YouTube and then make that phone call. That way all the jitters are kind of out of your system. But the biggest thing is just be consistent every single hour of the day.
And how do you train that consistency? How do you get people to have that?
Yeah. So in the mornings, whenever the SDR comes in, we just kind of, have a check-in every single hour of the day. Say, all right, guys, just kind of be consistent. We'll get together as a team. We'll kind of have a small team huddle, just kind of make sure that, everyone's all prepared for the day. And then throughout the day, I'll check in with the team just to kind of make sure that everything is kind of more consistent. There's no questions. There's no unanswered questions going on. If someone got off a really bad phone call, I'll have them come into my room. And then we'll just kind of, talk about it really quickly and just say, hey, you know what? No worries. Let's kind of tackle and learn from this current call and kind of tackle it from the next phone call. So I guess on a daily basis, we're just checking in with the team.
Cool. And to keep the consistency, I know you talk about daily basis and keeping the calls going. Do you have power hours and also connect times where everyone's making calls?
Yeah. So we do a lot of call blocks throughout the day. So we kind of, have a calendar where in the mornings is more of admin stuff, kind of going over your emails and responses from the previous day. And then we have a big block of call activity or email activity throughout the day. And then towards the end of the day is kind of more prospecting into new accounts and getting ready for the next day. So we do a lot of call blocks, power hours. We do a lot of, who can be on the phone the longest, who can make the most dials in that hour, if you will. So it kind of gets the team going, and, kind of having that competition, it relaxes a lot of the SDRs.
For sure. And then, you obviously have a lot of experience in teaching and coaching SDRs. How do you, yourself, how did you keep your emotions in check? And when you first started, were your emotions in check?
No, when I first started, my emotions were all over the place. So I'm definitely no, absolutely not. So my background is in cold calling. I always found it, just kind of a challenge, kind of a game, if you will, like how to get past the gatekeeper, how to get into the right decision makers. So I treated, every single call like a game. How far can I go? What kind of responses can I get? If it didn't go my way, kind of why it didn't go my way. And then just telling myself I just need to learn on every single phone call how to get better on the next call. So for me, I think by treating every single phone call like a game, it really kind of helped calm the nerves.
Was that something you told yourself, or was that someone that maybe a mentor told you? How'd you come about that?
No, I told myself that. I'm very competitive. I grew up playing sports. And so I always knew that, if I got emotional, let's say on the tennis courts, or if I got emotional, playing basketball, I was going to mess up. So I always told myself that I just got to calm down, take it for what it's worth, and then just kind of go from there.
100%. And so do you believe that the sports has actually helped you keep your emotions in check? And when you're hiring, are you looking for people who have played sports in either high school or college?
Yeah, good question. So sports has definitely helped my emotions be in check. And whenever I'm interviewing for future candidates, I'm not necessarily looking for only candidates who have a sports background, but anybody that kind of, has more of a competitive background, right? Whether it be they were in a competition in school, whether they played sports, whether they were on the debate team, anything that kind of, provided some sense of competition. I look for those type of candidates.
Yeah, for sure. And let's even go kind of a little deeper there. So let's say, hey, these people are starting again, and you find out people are getting on calls, and you find that someone, like, every time they mess up, they just get really upset and they have an outburst. What are you saying to that individual, and how are you helping them basically grow and mature to not have those outbursts?
Yeah, well, so in the beginning, I kind of let them have their outburst. That way I can just get all the frustrations out at that moment. You know what I'm saying? But then afterwards, it's just taking it back into the office and just kind of having a sit down and say, what happened? What can you learn from it? What do you think you did wrong? What could you have done better? So it's really just kind of analyzing the entire situation, but more so allowing the SDR to kind of assess their own mistakes, if you will, and using that as a learning opportunity going forward. So really just kind of diagnose what just happened and use it as a learning opportunity.
For sure. And then for yourself, on the role, you kind of told us what you did, but outside of the role, what are you doing to help keep your emotions in check? Because obviously this is a between the ears job, as I say. It's all about mindset. It's all about keeping a steady mindset and not letting the highs and lows affect you. So what were you doing outside of work? And then what are you doing even now outside of work as a leader to make sure your emotions in check and it doesn't affect your team?
Yeah. So, I've got my hobbies outside of work. I do a lot of reading. I'm trying to figure out, from a leadership perspective, how I can take all the insights that I gain and bring it to the team. So I think it's just by, keeping yourself busy, keeping yourself disciplined, engaging in different activities outside of work, and then just kind of using those to calm your nerves. So that way, when you do come into work, it's not just all about work, right?
Yeah, for sure. You have to distance between work and basically, what else you want to do outside of it.
Yep, exactly.
Cool. And then let's dive into a little bit more. So what are the different things that you would tell people that, their emotions maybe are getting flustered and, they feel like they're not doing as well? What are you telling these people to them daily to make sure that they're in the right line, right? Even if they may feel like they may be getting in the right trajectory, what are you telling them every single day to do outside of work?
Yeah, so on a daily basis, outside of work, I always tell them that engage in some type of activity where you're learning something new every single day, right? If you don't learn something new every single day, then you kind of plateau. So if that's reading something about the industry, what you're calling into, if that's reading about the product, if that's reading about different people and how they interact with salespeople, how to overcome objections, just kind of more of the psychology of the conversation. So it's just learning something new every single day is exactly what I tell my sales reps, because there's always something to learn, right? Yeah. If you go in every single day knowing that, okay, I know everything about what I'm supposed to be doing, then you're probably not going to be successful.
Right. Right. And do you feel like a lot of people have that mindset?
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a practice. People don't usually get it right off the bat, but I think the more you encourage them to do that, the more you ask them questions, the more you kind of review what they learned and how that impacted them that same day. I think, you know, just by doing that on a daily basis, it really does help. Yeah.
And even further, what do you feel like maybe other people, maybe other leaders are not doing to help keep their reps emotions in check and not basically spiraling down?
Yeah, I think what other leaders are not doing, or where I kind of see the gaps, is they don't really communicate with the reps on a daily basis. They may have a one-on-one, and then a week goes by, then they have another one-on-one, and then a week goes by. But if you're keeping in touch with your reps on a daily basis, and sometimes, you know, it's difficult to do when you're trying to manage a lot of the field reps and they're all remote. But from an inside sales perspective or an SDR perspective, if you're all under the same roof, it's really good practice to keep in communication and keep in touch on a daily basis. I think that's kind of where the gaps are with other leaders.
And why do you feel like that disconnect is there?
I think disconnect is there because, I mean, you know, from a leadership perspective, you're not just focusing on prospecting and opening conversations, but then you're kind of worried about closing the deals. You're worried about other aspects of the sales cycle, right? And right. So I think sometimes closing the deal, you know, it obviously supersedes prospecting into a new company. So sometimes, you know, sales leaders are stretched so thin that it's kind of hard to kind of manage the entire sales cycle. And then you kind of lose touch with your sales reps, only having to have conversations about why isn't a deal closing on time, right? So
yeah, of course. And what do you feel like what it comes down to is most of the things you've said is consistency. So how do you breed consistency?
Yep.
To as part of the team? Like how do you breed that?
Yeah, so I've got a whiteboard out by the SDRs, and on the whiteboard I've got in big letters, be consistent. So every single day they come into the office and they see this whiteboard, be consistent. And then I think by scheduling their calendar for call activity and time blocks and admin stuff, and then you've got, you know, prospecting into new accounts, if you follow that discipline on a daily basis, then that kind of starts to make you become more consistent, right? Not responding to emails when you're during call activity. So I think just by doing all of these things, it forces you to have those disciplines. And I think that helps with the whole concept of being consistent on a daily basis.
Yeah, I think, yeah, you have to be consistent. It has to be daily, all right? Because at the end of the day, like that's what really breeds the successful people is consistency. And a lot of people fail in that because, you know, maybe they don't have the process down and they're maybe not doing the right things to actually get there. And I really do believe that consistency is really important, and it's one of the things that I do. So with consistency, consistent breaks, right? On my calendar, I actually had consistent breaks as an SDR. Do you encourage that or discourage that for your reps?
No, I encourage that completely. So, you know, after you're doing your prospecting or after you're doing all the admin stuff or what have you, just go for a walk, you know, not just go to the restroom, but go get a coffee. If you don't drink coffee, just go for a walk. Go mingle with some other people. The challenge with that, though, is like having your breaks take too long, right? But I mean, as long as you're kind of doing a couple of things here and there by just going to your car and walking back, or watching a funny YouTube clip and then getting back into it again, I mean, I definitely encourage it.
Yeah. Did you take breaks as well when you were doing your cold calling? Is that something that you did, or you kind of contributed into?
No, yeah, I mean, everything that I'm kind of advising my reps on, I did it myself as well.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, I took breaks. I still take breaks all the time. But, you know, I'm cautious of how long my breaks are. But, I mean, you've got to get rid of, like, all the monotony of the day.
Right. And I think, like, that goes back to the topic, right? Like, I think that, like, you get so caught up in what you're doing that, you know, your emotions over time starting to pile up. And I believe that taking that break can kind of get you emotionally out of like the funk that you're in. Like, because I feel like sometimes people get so wrapped up in like, hey, I haven't scheduled anything or I haven't gotten any conversations, and they get frustrated and they spend all their time working, but actually it's actually counterintuitive because it's not being productive. And they end up getting on the phone and the prospect ends up being like, oh, this person is crazy, right? Because they haven't taken that break to actually leave that emotion that they were in.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
Yeah, for sure. And so, as we're closing now, we're asking these last questions. What do you believe is something that every single person should be doing to, get themselves emotionally steady and have a steady mindset?
Yeah, that's a good question. I believe that you've got to prepare for your day. You've got to prepare for that phone call. You've got to prepare for expectations of these certain questions are going to be asked of you in that phone call. You just have to prepare on a daily basis, and you do that by making sure that every call you make, every email you make, there's a sense of purpose there. If you just wing it, if you're not prepared for it, you're going to somehow get emotional about it. So you just have to prepare on everything that you do.
Yeah, 100%. And why? And the preparation, is that something that, how are you coaching for preparation, right? And I know we talked about this a little bit, but how are you really coaching for preparation to make sure those emotions don't get flustered? Are you telling people, hey, this is the schedule, you have to stick with it? Or it's like, based on your strengths, this is what you need to do?
Yeah, no, it's all based off your strengths, right? So highlight the strengths and work on the weaknesses, right? So definitely highlight on the strengths. So in preparation, do you know who you're calling into? Do you know why you're calling them? Do you know what you're going to say when you get them on the phone? Do you understand their business? And if you don't know some of these things, then those gaps are going to be highlighted in the conversation. There's going to be a lot more hesitation there. You're going to feel uncomfortable. And then that is a recipe, not for disaster, but a recipe for things to get emotional and out of hand.
100%. And Neal, as we're wrapping up, this is the last question I ask every single person that comes on the show. What is the one piece of advice that you give to SDRs as they enter into their new role?
Yeah, no. So the one piece of advice that I can say is that have fun with it, treat it like a game, and remember that you are there to provide value to the other person on the phone. However you do that, put it into your own words, use your own personality, and don't be a robot.
Awesome. Love it. Well, Neal, thank you so much for coming on the show, providing insight on a lot of things about emotions, tactics, and scheduling. As I always say, guys, keep dialing, and I'll see you guys soon.
All right. Thanks a lot, man.